All right, guys. Hey, welcome to Set to the Office, otherwise known as Adventures of Tremendous Fat Ass.
Yes.
I fit right in there.
Were you aware of that you were coming on a show that is named The Adventures of Tremendous?
Tremendous Badass?
That's a bad word.
Well, I think it fits right with my makeup, so I'm good with that.
Well, this is our special guest is Bob Knipp, as you most people that watch or listen will know Bob.
Legendary.
Yeah,
Legendary. Bob, the Tremendous Fat Ass thing you might have missed, but I think I mentioned it in episode 1, was like 10 years ago I made a fantasy football team on ESPN, and I named my team Tremendous Fat Ass, and now I get 4 or 5 emails a year. Greetings, Tremendous Fat Ass, and it makes me laugh every single time.
You know, I think I remembered that. Yeah. I think I remembered you had that.
There's something about that, getting an official email from ESPN that says "Greetings, Tremendous Fat Ass," and it never ceases to make me laugh. So I enjoy
That's
that.
what we love about you, dude.
I know, you know, hey, if you're gonna be a fat ass, be tremendous.
Embrace it, right?
You know
Embrace
what I mean?
it.
So, okay, this is season 2, episode 7. For no reason at all, we decided to go season 2. There was nothing.
I feel like we're coming up on season 3.
Well, I think we went 12 episodes in the first season, so I think we'll just knock it down to 12 and move along. So, Bob, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
It's great to be here.
Are you settled down?
I'm kind of calmed down.
Okay. Yeah, we got you out of bed. We're sorry about that.
No, it's totally my fault. You know, I was thinking on the way here, the older you get and the less things you have to do, the more you forget because, you know, you don't have that routine that you're in. You don't have these normal things that happen, you know, bang, bang, bang with kids. You got to go here, you got to go there. Now it's just like nothing. So it's hard to fall into a routine and be where I need to be.
That
sounds
what I need to do.
Yep.
Traumatic.
That is an interesting.
It's traumatic.
It sounds
it gets real.
That is an interesting kind of I don't know, phenomenon that happens because when you're teaching and when you're coaching and you got the kids, you know, you're not as apt to forget because you're go, and then when you're like retired and the kids are all out and you know it's easier to
And by the way, speaking of that, my students really liked having you guest teach for me. That. And I was glad to read your note that it was a good day.
It was a great day.
I threatened them with everything.
No, it was a great day.
Oh, Bob, you subbed in the harbor?
Yeah. Didn't I tell you that?
I think, maybe. But I can't remember.
You know, and I think that's the beauty of subbing. Now I get out there and see the rest of the world because, you know, at Southeast Polk, we were all in our own little areas, and
I think
you don't really know what's going on. You know, you don't really know what's going on in the other parts of the building, and I am just so impressed.
Hey, they should have a sub day where all the teachers do that. We just all switch for one day.
Well, you know, they used to. Yeah, they used to have a requirement that you visit another classroom, that you just go in
that'd be cool.
We didn't have to write anything. We just went in and sat.
It
was kind of neat because
non-disclosure.
Yeah, but it was kind of neat because again, you get to see there's some powerful teachers out there. There really are, and
it's a shame more of us didn't get to see you in action.
No,
I know we're going to get to that, but seriously,
when
I say legendary, you know
this,
right? That you are a legendary storyteller in the classroom, and I'm sure other areas of your life. I mean, we're excited about it.
Yeah, I got the pleasure of evaluating you a couple times. I think when they, for some reason, they put me in charge of the social studies department because I'm such a social studies guy. But yeah, those were my favorite. Those were my favorite times going, knowing I was going to go in. And I basically already had the evaluation filled out because I already knew what I was going to say.
But you know what's weird is you still get nervous, and you still when there's that guest in there, because I kind of get out there sometimes. I always wondered, you know, how that's going to sit with some other people, but
I know the feeling.
You know,
I know that feeling.
Yeah, do you, Danny?
The conversations with students change a bit. You know, it's not.
Hey,
quite
you got to go with it though. See where it flows.
You know, I think the last time that I evaluated you, Bob, the part that made you the most nervous was all the forms that you had to fill out.
Yeah, that's some bull. That's some BS.
I am not a detailed person, as you can attest to.
You know what though? That's okay. I mean, because you know, I had similar issues with other people that I had to evaluate, you know, and just You know, the dog
Special
and pony.
ops, you know what? When they come in from like their Green Beret,
Right.
Navy SEAL mission, they don't do
yes.
paperwork.
No.
Okay?
Yeah,
Right.
they just there was a ridiculous dog and
It
pony
was
show.
special ops up in hippie history. I
That is
guarantee you.
ridiculous.
What I do sometimes, I think what we do can be
Yeah.
considered, the special ops of the military.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to thank you, because my students can sometimes test. I've had some, I'm not coming back, but and I was thinking about that on the way here. The way my shirt got wet. You asked me why is my shirt wet when I can. I said I'll explain it on the podcast. So I was on my way here and I had one of those water bottles. Why do they make them with you got to pull it out? And then it's just, why do they do that?
I don't know.
Squirt.
Like, are there that many people in this society that they need
When
to
you're
like
running
shoot
your
their
marathon.
water in?
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know how I grabbed one of those. But it made me think about this imaginary story that never happened with a previous student sitting in my class.
This did not happen.
No, but it made me think of like,
Right, like because you're a creative mind.
I'm sure
and-
because
right.
in my room you can't eat food, but you can drink non-alcoholic beverages.
Right.
And there's some work avoidance behavior,
Some. Right.
Try to get out of class. I try to stretch that endurance. I don't want to torture them.
Right,
But
right.
the way you got to stretch that, And so I'm always gonna. And once they realize they can't get out, anyway, I had a student. His water bottle. He was amazing at making it crackle as he took a squirt in, and he knew that pressed my buttons, and I would look over at him. And I would hear this music. This is where you're supposed to put. I would hear this music pop up in my head as we make eye contact as he goes.
Really? Yeah.
And as I thought about that, I went. And I squirted water
all
on
over
me.
your.
I see that as a sub too. Just the little
The
things.
little-
They just jab.
I don't want to top. I'm not trying to topic top, but that just reminds
No,
me of,
it's all good.
of a
That's-
friend in common, Chuck Redlow. Okay,
Sir
love
Charles.
Chuck, love Chuck. And back in the days when we would have meetings, and Chuck would sit, sometimes beside me, and I have this hearing problem, so every little background noise is irritating because it makes it harder to see or harder to hear everything going on. And Chuck could not drink a bottle of water without crinkling that son of a bitch. And I'm like, Chuck, just let gravity will take care of everything.
You don't have to crunch it.
If you just open the lid and then just tilt it backwards and let gravity do it, but Chuck had to go and just crinkle that. And I think he was just doing it to bother me. And then he probably laughing about it, but
I don't know. I don't know about that.
good old Chuck. I haven't seen him in so long, but Bob, we're glad you're here, man. You mentioned it's kind of something I was going to ask you about. When you talked about the program about where teachers would visit other classrooms.
Right.
Which professional development initiative was that? Because you probably
Oh
went
my
through
God!
like 15 of them.
I want to say it was about 10 years ago. I really do.
Do you remember the name? Because
I don't know. It was, and again, I think it was a really good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where it came from, whether it was the idea that, we've just gotten so big, we don't have that community spirit anymore.
Right.
I'm trying to think of what subject I would
Was it
choose.
a dimensions of learning kind of thing? I think
I
it
don't-
might have been something.
The
to do
thing
with
that I thought of, it was the mentor mentee thing.
that's
But
possible too.
I was just curious because you had how many years? 38, 39 years in public ed?
39.
39.
39.
So
I
you
should've-
probably
I should've
saw
gotten one more, I guess.
You probably saw at least a dozen life-changing educational professional development initiatives.
Oh, every one of them was life changing.
And it's weird. They built on each other too.
just-
know,
right.
into this epic.
yeah.
Ah.
Now I need that, one of those initiatives for the old guys. The
Right,
old guy
right,
initiative. I don't know.
Yeah.
Visit other old guys and share war stories.
Yeah,
or
you
something.
go to the VFW or the local. I was just wondering because I think when you were around, when you've been around it, you probably saw. Not only did you see all those initiatives, but they just kind of repackage the same ones over and over
Yeah,
and over. And
you know,
rename
and
them.
I found myself about halfway through my career becoming that old guy. You know, the old. Well, here's a new initiative. I'm going to be bitter about it. I can't just embrace it. I've got to be upset about it.
Right.
And you see it happening, and I didn't want to become that person.
No.
And you know, that was one of the decisions I went into retiring. Is I got more and more crotchety, just more and more. You know.
Well, I never saw that out of you. So that's to your credit, because and it's easy to get that way, because when somebody's, you know, okay, now we're going to spend the next year learning this new thing,
Right.
and you know,
Right.
2 years from now we're not even going to be doing it anymore, because there's going to be a new principal or a new superintendent, and they're just going to change.
Yeah,
whatever.
and you know, I saw that today subbing. I saw, and I'm not going to mention names, but they were doing something with, you know, online, of course, which again, that throws me for a loop. But I thought, you know, and then I had to worry about every kid having a computer. They've got to do it on their computer. It's you know, and of course, a few of them didn't work, and so we spent, you know, 10, 15 minutes just getting everybody up and ready to go. And I just thought, get out a pice of paper, or here's a worksheet, you know, whatever. I don't know. It just, it was kind of aggravating, but you know, once it gets working, you know, it's fine.
And you just remind
Nobody
yourself,
got hurt.
No, but you remind yourself you're going to make that sub money, you know,
I
regardless.
did.
That you just do what they tell you to do. But you know, that 10 or 15 minutes you had to waste, you could have told at least one really good story.
And that's the thing I miss. But you know, as a substitute teacher, you got to follow the plan. You don't go in. You know, I mean,
they'll test you, but I mean, in my classroom, that ain't gonna work. Hey, is that phone? Is that one that's got a timer on? Like, what clock? What's it say? What time is it right now? What time's class start? Oh, what should you be doing? Okay, thank you.
Well, I think
that might be crotchety, but
I think that was the issue today too. It was an opportunity.
Yeah,
for them to
they'll
get on
do
their
that
phone. Well,
stuff
I can
to
do
you.
it on my phone. Yeah.
Oh,
sure,
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm not going to have to correct it tomorrow.
Right.
You know,
So you were going toward the story. What's one of your favorite stories? Because I know that there's how many people out there
man.
they don't remember anything about high school that they learned, but they remember a story.
Well, I tell you what, I've got 3 kids in this house that took hippie history with Bob Knipp, and there would have been 4 if you would have stayed in one more year, because I had his schedule ready to go. But yeah, you've got a short list of things that you always have to tell. I remember one of them vaguely, a Darth Vader.
Oh, meeting Darth Vader. Yeah. See, I worked as a bellman at a hotel in Waterloo, and you wouldn't think Waterloo would be a place where any kind of celebrities would end up, but you know, with the Unidome in Cedar Falls, it was close enough. If there was a big event, our hotel was the biggest hotel. So I had the chance to meet Darth Vader. He was in town, I don't know, doing some kind of promotional thing.
Not the voice though.
Not the voice,
Bob.
the guy in the suit. And
All right. What did his voice sound like? Like,
you know what was
Probably sound like
surprising?
mine.
You know, he's such an intimidating character. You know, big, hulking man. But this guy, I had to pick him up from the airport. And I was also the limo driver.
Okay.
I drove an Econo van.
Okay.
And he had a scraggly beard, and he had, you know, these wire rim glasses, and he was kind of hunched over, and just totally opposite of what I would have envisioned, you know. And as I look back, I got on the guy's website just to see what he looked like, and he was I don't know if he was a Mr. Universe or he was at one time.
So he
was a big dude, you know,
formidable guy.
not at this time.
No, he lost some of that.
He had kind of, you know, that those years had passed like it has for a lot of us. But,
Okay.
no, so I you know, of course, I'm always, you know, I got to get the tip. I was working pretty much minimum wage, so tips were a big deal. And
yeah.
so we pull up to the hotel, and he hands me the tip, you know, and I never look at the tip. I was taught never to look at the tip.
Right.
You take and you tuck.
Take
You
your
can always
tuck.
look later on.
Yep.
So he handed me the tip, and I tucked, and nice to meet you. I think I said force be with you and chuckled. And he didn't really see
he's never heard that.
Yeah, he's never heard that.
Right, right.
So I pull it out, and it's a piece of paper. And it says, "The force be with you, Darth Vader." And I took that thing because I had never even seen a Star Wars movie at that time.
Hey, that's
Really?
a gift that
No,
keeps
I
on
wasn't
giving,
into
though.
it. Now I am,
Okay.
as I'm older. But I took it and I crumpled it up and I let it fly. I thought, and now I wish I would have kept it.
Yeah, right,
I wish
right.
I would have kept it, but
Right.
I was like, come on, a couple bucks,
Yeah.
beer money, whatever,
Right.
whatever kind of money I needed at
Right.
that time.
That's good that you checked his website because really anybody can say they're the guy in the
Yeah,
Darth Vader suit.
yeah,
I mean,
it was him.
Well, I couldn't say it because everybody knows that Darth Vader suit isn't this fat. But I mean, like any normal-looking dude can say that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's true. That sounds like a story Hendrickson tells.
He probably stole it from me. He
his
was in my
students.
class.
His is he was a caddy for this guy,
Yes.
and he was the
Yes.
Dalai Lama.
I've heard it.
Yeah, but Eric will tell stories
Yeah.
that are movies
Right.
to the students as though they are real, and the students don't know the difference.
Those were some of my favorite days because Hendrickson would spin out this 30-minute story.
Yeah.
And halfway through the story, you'd see the light bulb come on for like one or two kids, but the rest of them are completely in the dark.
I think he told me that on the way to a coach's clinic. And, I'm like, wow, this is a greatest story on earth. Man, I'm going to stay. And then,
Right.
Well, it was right toward the end. I thought,
Sure.
you get rotten. Why did he do that to me? But
So you guys have that in common. You've both driven famous people because you drove a famous.
Yeah.
person,
When I
too.
worked at the Funny Bone in my mid-20s, I was a doorman, and that was my job in addition to, tossing out the riffraff,
Right.
was to pick up the comedians from the hotel. And so, Rod White was the biggest
Oh,
one that
that-
I ever
I
picked
Didn't
up.
you
lot of-
guys smoke a joint together or something?
He's
okay, now we're going
What?
to open it. We're going to open these.
we're opening it up, aren't we? It's all.
I was
No,
trying to
I was
remember
kind
the
of keeping
story.
it
I just-
PG-13, but I
Oh, it can get pretty rough in here. No, the story that I've told is that Rod White in my open vehicle, Bob, I had a Jeep
Right,
tracker type. We're stopped at a stoplight in Windsor Heights, and he breaks out a one-hitter and lights it up, and I'm like,
Holy
and I don't know who Rod White is at this point because he's not tater salad
He's
until
not-
the next year.
not done that.
He got
series.
big the next year, and
Right.
I told him, hey, Ron, we're in Windsor. No, Clive. I said we're in Clive, Iowa, and he used that in his bit on stage. He used the Clive, Iowa line, but I just said, I don't, because he lived in Mexico at the time. I'm like, that might be okay down in the barrio, bro,
Wow.
but it ain't okay here, So, but yeah, that's my.
Well, that's another thing about my stories that I tell. No matter what group of students I told, all my stories to, somebody always had a better story. There's
Yeah.
always the Tommy Topper.
Hey, you know what?
Tommy,
No.
Guess
you-
what?
Now that not
Maybe
quite.
Darth Vader wanted to take a rip.
Yeah, I don't know.
man.
I was thinking about Johnny Cash. I don't know what I was watching, but he was on some kind of interview, and I carried bags for Johnny Cash.
Okay.
And that was I'll never forget because that was my first celebrity, and I called my girlfriend at the time. I said, Johnny Cash is coming down.
No,
to
this is
the
the same job.
Yeah.
Same job as the Darth
I'm,
Vader job.
I'm 16 years old at the time.
Okay.
That was my first job.
Okay.
First job. We lived about a block from the hotel, and my dad said, "You got to get a job. You're 16 now." And he made me wear a tie, and he rehearsed the whole thing, how you get a job. I went up to the manager.
That's
and
awesome.
Shook hands with the manager and said, "Hi, I'm Bob, and I would like to work here." He said, "Okay." And, I gave
Easy.
you a job.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I was a bellman, and that was my first big carry was Johnny Cash, and so I called this girlfriend I had at the time, and she even came down to the hotel and just stood in the lobby. She never got the autograph or anything, but I'll never forget his words to me. On my dying bed, I will remember these words.
What'd he say?
He said, "Hi there."
Wow.
That's all I got out of
That's
Johnny.
amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was,
That's great.
man, a few words.
Yeah. Now, over the years, you could have made that those words, you could have said anything you want.
Well,
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah,
It makes it
I'd
more
have had to be
believable when you
creative.
keep it down.
Right.
I would have had to be creative.
You get everybody's hopes up. Like, what did he say?
What did he say?
I'm Johnny Cash.
Yeah, you should have
So
said
that was a common one you would tell students.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
Okay.
think I used to have kind of a I didn't ever write it down because everything was fly by night.
Sure.
It was in hippie history, we didn't really have a book, and there's a lot of filler time there. So
Right.
you got to
That's the beauty of it.
You got to fill it in, and so I would usually I'd go story crazy just the first part of the semester. Because I was just jazzed up for a new semester and
Right.
try to get the students to like me and those kinds of things and so I think about after the first week and a half they were all storied out. They were ready to do whatever we were going to do.
Right.
So
What was your main one, do you think? Like if you had one class that you had to just you knew it was going to be a tough class and you had to hook them in with a great story.
well the stories generally took most of the class period.
Right. Because ironically enough, they lasted 43 minutes.
because there was always tomorrow.
Right.
And that was one less day I had to plan for. And again, we didn't have a book, so what are you going to do?
Right.
My Baltimore Orioles story always took a class period. And
Okay.
you're
you're a big Orioles
I'm
fan.
a huge Oriole fan,
Okay.
which
okay.
is tough
from
to
back in the day too.
Yeah, since 1966 when they won the World Series, I was hooked.
Okay.
But finally got to visit Camden Yards, and it's a 45-minute story, but long story long. I was sitting out in left field, and about the third inning, and the Orioles are getting shelled. Mike Messina's pitching for the Orioles. He's a stud, but he's getting rocked that day. And Albert Bell comes up, and you could just hear it off the bat, just this thwack, just pure.
Just drilled it.
And he drilled it, and I could see that thing. I'm just a few feet off the fence in left field, and I could just see that ball getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it landed just a few feet from me. And
Okay.
I jumped, and there's little kids trying to get to the ball, and I'm throwing elbows. I'm getting that ball.
Boom,
I'm
body
getting that
checking
ball.
like it's hockey.
And I grabbed that son of a gun, and I thought I just won the 7th game of the World Series. I was elated. Well, I didn't understand at the time, and the Cubs have always done this. You don't keep the opposing team's home run.
That's
Drill
right.
that shit
Here I
back.
am with an Albert Bell ball hit by off Mike Messina. I mean, my God, in Camden Yards, the Mecca,
Right.
the
And
Shrine.
Albert Bell was probably in the midst
Albert
of his 50
Bell, yeah,
homer type
he had
seasons.
just gotten caught. What did he do? He was
PEDs,
no,
wasn't it?
well, he probably did that too, but he was corking his bat.
Yes.
And he had just gotten
right.
caught like a week before that.
You're not
so,
supposed to do that,
so these guys, these hecklers, these drunks that
Don't
were on
cork
back
your
of
bat.
me, they were yelling. I don't even want to tell you what they were yelling, but it's something to do with corky and some
Right,
other
right,
some
and
other
you're-
bad words. And
Right.
So I got that ball and I'm dancing around and the crowd starts chanting, "Throw it back, throw it back!" And the drunks who were
Throw
my
it.
friends, just an inning before, the guy said, "Throw the ball back," and I said, "I can't." He said, "Why?" I said, "I'm from Iowa." And
We don't do that.
Well, he said, "I don't give a where you're from. You throw the ball back." And I was a nervous wreck, so I held that ball up, and I always tell the students, the crowd went crazy, and I threw that ball as hard as I could. I said it landed right by the pitcher's mound. Well, it landed by the left fielder, but that.
Hey, it's
They
your
don't even
story,
know that.
man. It's
Yeah,
your
true
story.
story, but well, no, actually, I'm missing a part of the story.
It happens.
When I held I got to make the decision of whether to throw this ball back, and the crowd's getting on me. The drunks are going to beat me up, and I made eye contact with the left fielder, who was Dwight Smith, who had played
Yep.
for the Cubs.
That's right.
And I said, "Hey, Dwight," I said, "if I throw this ball back, will you get me another ball?" And he shook his head, yes.
Oh.
So I held that ball up, and then that's when I heaved it. Well, the game started, and I understood I wasn't going to get the ball right away. Another inning went by. No ball. Another inning went by. Now the drunks are back on my side.
Yeah, they're okay.
They're like, "Hey, where's his ball?"
Where's his ball?
Yeah,
right.
Singular.
So
Singular.
They did their warm-ups, and Dwight Smith turned around to back up, toward the left field fence, and we made eye contact. And I just gave him a shrug, like, "Hey, buddy,
What's up?
what's up?" And he shook his head, yes, called for a ball. Next thing I know, I got the ball.
Oh,
Hey, once you get the drunks on your side,
I've got that ball sitting down in my man cave. And
Okay.
It's right on a shelf right by the bar there. And,
Okay.
and of course, anybody that sits down to have a cold beverage, they have to hear the whole damn story.
right.
If they go through about a 6-pack by the time I'm done with the
Right.
done with the story. So, yeah, I had a lot of
That's a
stories
good
like
one.
that. But whether I don't think I embellish it. I just tell a long story.
Right. See,
Just like you guys sitting there like, Jesus, are you ever going to be done with it?
no. That's you know what? That's part of the reason. That's part of what I admire about you, because these are real. Now, like I'm full of shit. I tell stories that are like, I don't know if you remember my office, but I had that arena football
Right.
sitting in,
Absolutely.
and I had a complete lie about that ball.
It doesn't matter.
But I used to tell it all the time, and it was real to whoever I told it to. But I used to say that it was that Kurt Warner threw it.
if you
And I-
believe it,
Yeah, I was
It's
just going to
true.
say the Seinfeld.
But it was actually the year after Kurt Warner played, and
It's
it was
not a line if you believe.
some schlub threw it in there.
Right.
And actually, there was a guy in the crowd, and it was coming right for him, Bob. It was right in his hands. And right before it got to his hands, some dickhead behind him came and chipped it just enough that it went over his hands and hit him right in the nose. I mean, it just, and his nose bled. And it hit him so hard it carried him to the corner, and I
Did
got
you
it.
feel bad for him though? And thought,
No, I felt great because I got the ball. But then, so I'm sitting there, and I was there with Marta.
that's how you
And
know
we're
this story's
sitting
true.
there, and
Yeah.
these guys behind us were like, "Dude, how much for the ball? Give me the $20 for the ball." I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna sell you the ball." So
I ain't got $20.
I ain't got. So I end up, I'm gonna go get a beer, go to the bathroom, whatever. And Marta's got the ball, and so I'm coming back, and I see the guy that's been trying to offer me money for the ball. He's coming up with the ball in his hands, and I look down, and Marta's going like,
What the hell?
the guy had tried to kite my ball, man.
Oh,
Nobody does that. Nobody does that.
No.
Now, if I was really a good storyteller, I'd tell you I'd roughed him up.
Oh,
and got
you
the ball
sure
back,
did.
but
In your mind, you did.
I did, but no, he saw me and he's like, "Oh, I'm just kidding. Here's your ball back." And it was one of those deals.
No, don't do that.
No, but it's not quite as good as it didn't really happen. But when I tell the students about it, when they're all pissed
Well-
off in my office, it really did.
The whole storytelling thing. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and the class was 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I thought, in some respects, it's a story. It's a story
Yeah.
of growing up during that time, and it certainly was a different time.
Right.
I grew up with eight kids in our family. We didn't have anything, but we had each other, and
Right.
that's what mattered. And just the whole blue collar, baby boomer generation. It kind of, I hope it fed into that somewhat.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I think that's a way a lot of students learn, though,
Make that
is by
connection.
making it a
Yeah.
story.
Right. And
But and when you share that stuff about you, though, that's what hooks those kids in, man.
Yeah.
When they can, I always felt that way, man. I mean,
right.
That's why we
when
bring
you've got
in-
a teacher who's willing to kind of share something about themselves, and you make that connection with kids. It doesn't matter how great you are at your subject
Right.
matter. If you can't connect with the kids in some way, then it doesn't.
Yeah, and if it isn't bragging, like, hey, you look at me, I've done this, I've done.
Right, right.
It wasn't
No, yeah,
that. It was.
we don't
It was.
need
I
that,
was
but
laughing
it's-
at myself.
Right.
It was.
Right.
It was. So.
Yep.
But anyway, it was a great time filler.
Yeah.
No doubt.
How did you get into to teaching hippie history? When did that start?
I my journey in education, I've been around the block a little bit. I started off being from Waterloo, Iowa, kind of an industrial town.
Waterloo, Columbus. Correct?
Waterloo, Columbus, yeah,
Okay.
Catholic school. But my first teaching job was in Guthrie Center, Iowa. And I thought, social studies jobs are hard to come by.
Yeah.
Well, it was, I got an interview there. I had interviewed 3 or 4 other places, didn't get a job. And I didn't even know where the place was.
No.
And so I interviewed there, and they offered me the job. And I'll never forget, I think my dad was really disappointed in me that I took this job in this little podunk town out in western Iowa. And I really did. I got an apartment living right on the main street of town.
Okay.
And little did I know, but the students at Guthrie Center used the parking lot right across the street from where I lived as their gathering place.
Oh, great.
And, so I'd have to look out my window all alone in this apartment and look. My students knew I lived there, and they'd heckle me from there. And I thought, this is the worst place in the world. And then I had a student who, smartest kid in the class, one of those kids that raised their hand before you asked a question, answered every dang question. Smarter than me, and I knew it. He
Get
knew
tired
it
of
too.
those kids, man.
He knew it too, but he was a nice kid. And finally, one day he said, Knipp, he said, are you married? You're not married. I said, no. He goes, you got a girlfriend? No, my girlfriend and I broke up, from college. And he goes, you know what? You ought to meet my sister. Which he's saying this right in front of all of my students. And I'm like,
Get a picture of her?
Well, you know what I said?
How old's
I said,
your sister?
where's she at?
Yes.
She goes to Iowa. I said, give me her number.
Go on.
I had no intention of calling her.
Right.
And
Hey, did he get an A?
He took a test. Well, he was an A+ student, but he had a test that day. He took the test, and at the end, he put Julie, and he put her number down.
Oh my God.
And
this is
this is absolute truth. And so, I didn't think anything of it, but the Thanksgiving was rolling around, and Iowa students were off on break, and they had one bar in town, and I was down there, and this girl down there, and I thought, well, who's she? And, well, that's Brad's sister. And
That's awesome.
I guess okay. And things worked out pretty well, and so we've been married. I don't know we've been married 40 years and 30. I don't know, something.
That's cool.
That's
I
amazing.
hope Julie doesn't listen to this, but we've been
No
married
one
a long
does.
time. But
No one does.
Brad probably regrets
worry.
the day he gave me her number. But
That's amazing.
yeah, isn't that amazing? And
That's
so
a great story.
And so Guthrie Center became, it's a second home now.
Sure.
And I love the place.
Right.
But at the time, being 24 years old or 23 years old, and you're young single guy, and you're from a city, and to be there, it really was a change for me.
Sure.
And little did I know how much that would change my world, and it really did.
Isn't it funny, the little things like
little
that?
things like that. And I've always wondered what would have happened. If I hadn't got that job, I'd have
Right.
never met Julie.
Right, or if you had-
I'd
yeah.
I'd never had these kids.
Or if you had to been you and played up that kid's request about his sister.
yeah.
If you'd just stop it.
Really,
Whatever,
it just kind of the way things, and that's kind of the way my life's gone.
Yeah.
Just different these accidents that happen that you just sometimes turn out for the better most of the time, and
Well, I think you remember when they come out for the better. I mean,
you try to forget the others.
try to forget the other, but that's the same. Well, not the same, but I met Marta after I started at Southeast Polk, and Amy Doherty introduced us.
Oh, there you go.
And Amy
It's kind of
Doherty
the same
and
kind
Marta
of story.
graduated high school together.
It's kind of the same kind of story.
And
isn't it?
it kind of is, because Amy at the time was trying to tell me about this great girl that she went to high school with, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to meet anybody. And so then it was more of, well, why don't you, I had a roommate that played football in Iowa, and he, and she's like, why don't you bring him, and we'll see if they are interested in each other.
Yeah.
And so I took him to the bar, and Marta showed up, and I'm like, oh well, this has got to happen. I mean, just, what
Well,
I mean? But if I had to, so it's kind of what you're talking
and
about.
sometimes those didn't work out.
Right.
I've had people try to fix me up when I was a young guy. And
Sure.
you're like, oh my God,
Right.
how do I get out of this now?
The kids that would hang out in the parking lot that
Yeah.
would give you a hard time.
Yeah, they were good kids, but you know.
Yeah, looking back on it, if you had to have, do you think you could have got into their car to plant something?
Oh.
Because here's an idea. Listen.
I know.
You tuck away a paintball gun in there, okay?
Oh, my God.
Then you've got yourself a couple of sniper perches, and then you start out just sniping, and then you keep closing the distance, and it's just paint everywhere. Shoot your own door, and then be like, "What'd you guys do this to me for?" And boom,
I would have
handled.
loved to have had a paintball gun.
Yeah,
and
they probably
just
didn't.
unloaded, but
This was probably what, 70, early 70s?
oh, when all that happened, early '80s.
Early 80s. Or, yeah, I didn't mean to
probably
make you older than
'83
that.
or something like
Yeah.
that. You know.
Okay, all right. That's interesting. So don't you have mostly brothers? Am I right on
Yeah,
that?
I grew up in a family of 8 kids and
Did
7
you-
boys.
Are you Catholic?
Very Catholic.
Yeah. See,
Very
my mom's
Catholic.
got it's a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you know, again, growing up in the '60s and '70s, there were a lot of families.
Yeah,
it wasn't
just farming.
I mean, what was above the norm, or what was kind of weird about our family, were the 7 boys,
Sure,
and the 1 girl. But oh heck, families of 10, 11 kids.
Yeah.
Is your
That
oldest
was
brother
not-
named
Can you-
James?
The oldest brother, no.
John?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. It's Steve, Tom, Bill, Dave, Tim, Bob, Kathy, Mike.
That's
Most
Oh,
kind
you're right
impressive.
in the middle? Are you right in the middle?
No, I'm toward the end.
Okay.
I'm number 6. I always have to think about.
So
that.
you felt some pressure because some of your brothers were pretty good
They
athletes.
were good
I think.
athletes. So we all played football. We all wrestled. I mean, that
Okay.
was just the
What
way
you
it
did.
was. I'd never even. I loved playing basketball, but I had to wrestle.
wrestle.
Joel
I had
wanted to
wrestle.
play basketball. Didn't work out.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. I was too fat.
I was too slow, So it's just kind of the way it was, and you had that kind of tradition, and
Right.
we
You didn't have any. It wasn't even really a choice in you. I mean, your older
never even
brothers
thought about it.
Your older brothers do it, and
Yeah,
you'd have probably been
yeah.
a pussy if you didn't do
Right,
it. So you
right.
had to do it.
And we wrestled
like,
all the time. Our living room floor was just wrestling,
Thunderdome
and
all
it
the
wasn't
time.
very big. It was smaller than this room we're
Okay.
in right now, and yeah, we'd wrestle and
Hey, do you want to
beat
hear
the hell
something
out
cool?
of each other.
Our theme right now in our afternoons is Vietnam, and
yeah.
Thursday I'm taking the students. We are taking them to the Gold Star Museum,
Oh,
and there's a guy that was a POW for 7 years in the Hanoi Hilton. That's going to talk to him
I should stow
and
away
give him a
on that.
tour.
Where's the Gold Star Museum? Where is
Yeah,
that?
come and check it out with
I
us.
should. I'm subbing on Thursday, but
What's that?
Where is that?
Camp Dodge.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
You should tell Pettit that you need a little bit of support and see if they can hire a sub
Oh my
to
God.
come in and help
Yeah,
you.
I would love that. I would love
Yeah.
that. None of my older brothers, they were of age,
Okay.
but they didn't get drafted. My one brother went to the Air Force Academy, so he didn't get drafted, and he was out of there before or after the Vietnam War was over. But yeah, I just remember. I remember just like it was yesterday. A family, a wrestler who wrestled with my brothers, was killed in Vietnam. And I never forget riding my bike over to the funeral home, which was
Wow.
just 2 blocks away from our house. And it was a weird thing, but the window, it was a huge window in front, and you could see the casket in there. And I just remember looking and seeing the flag, and that's when it really hit me that some of these people don't come back.
Yeah.
This is a real thing, and
Right.
and we were all just. I just remember growing up thinking, I could go to Vietnam, and I wasn't that far off of it, but yeah, it's kind of the dark cloud that kind of hung over that generation.
Sure.
That,
Were you fearful that your brothers
I
might?
absolutely was, but they all went to college,
Sure.
so they've got the college deferments, which was totally unfair when you think about it.
Right.
They had wrestling scholarships, football, but we didn't have the money. But people could essentially buy their way out of going to Vietnam by
Right.
going to college, and it really was an unfair system. And then they got rid of that and went to the lottery system.
Right.
And my two brothers that are just older than me, they had very high numbers. It's the only lottery the Knipps ever won. Right?
Right,
I mean,
right,
seriously,
right.
when you look at
Right,
it that
right.
way, they had high numbers. That's a win.
Well, and when you think about that, with time as giving you a lot of perspective, that is an interesting. When you look back on that, the idea that anybody that goes to college is automatically
That's totally unfair.
you would never in this
No,
day and age
no,
even
you couldn't get away with
consider
that. You
some
couldn't get
idea
away
like
with
that. But it was kind of the norm back then. But then even during that time, though, there were people that were saying, "Hey, wait a minute, why are we doing this?"
Right. It's like if you're not, I don't want to say fit, but if you're not a college type student, then you're expendable.
Right.
It makes no sense. And
Yeah,
you know.
there were around 58,000
Yeah,
of those
absolutely.
caskets.
Absolutely.
that you
That's
saw.
amazing. Okay, where'd you end up going to?
I went to UNI on
UNI.
a wrestling scholarship.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought. And so most of your brothers were
Two oldest brothers wrestled there, and
okay.
no, I had offers to go other places. Michigan was a possibility. That was my
wow.
second choice, and went and visited there, and came down to I want to be close to home so my parents can watch me wrestle, and
Sure.
I was going to be this big wrestling star and everything else, and full ride scholarship. Everything fell into
Great.
place, and a walk on. This guy walked on at my weight, same age,
What weight were you back then?
190.
Okay.
And he just kicked the living hell out of me. Here I was, this guy on full ride, and this walk on is just beating the.
Where was he from?
He was from Algona. Kirk Myers was his name.
Okay.
And at the time it was devastating. It was like, I felt so good. Here I was, free full ride, and he ended up being a 4-time All-American.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
in Division I. So
Right. Okay.
I guess.
Iron sharpens iron. So,
Yeah, I guess.
I
Well,
can
and then
tell you-
after my sophomore year, I just quit. I was.
Oh,
They moved me up to heavyweight, and I was at that time they didn't have a limit on heavyweights, and I weighed about 210 pounds, and I was wrestling guys 320.
Lord.
And it didn't work out. I
man.
was just done with it, and I
Sure,
never
right.
regretted
No?
walking away.
Well,
But I became a student then.
right.
Everything up to that point in my life was just it was all sports, and
Right.
that's how I gauged my success. And,
Sure.
And then when wrestling kind of fell apart, I had to kind of reassess where I was going, and I became a pretty decent student.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a 4-point, but
Hey, I don't think any of us were.
above that line I was at before.
Right,
let's
right,
put it
right,
that way.
right.
So.
Well, I think sometimes the great ones, in terms of teachers, never leave that being a
Yeah.
good student.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm not sure that I ever really looked too much at resumes and transcripts
Right.
for GPAs.
Because there's a difference between and that's where working as a bellman and doing all those other
Right.
things, working construction in the summers and having to work
Sure.
to get through school
Right.
rather than
Right.
here it was I was on this full ride. It made a world of difference, and
Sure.
you value
Right.
you value things you have to work for, and I think that's where I kind of had a moment where a moment of clarity, if
Sure.
you will, that there were things more important than
Yeah.
being on the athletic field. But I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No.
I'm sure none of you guys would.
No.
It shaped me. It really
Sure.
did. And,
How was that conversation with Dad when you dropped wrestling? Was that tough
well,
with your brothers too?
I think at that time, with my father, who never was an athlete, but of course he just was always there. But I think at that point, he saw that this wasn't going well. And,
Okay.
it was time to move on. And
Sure.
And when I told him I wanted to quit wrestling, he said, "That's fine, but you're not going to quit school."
Right.
And that's probably one of the best things he ever said to me, because I think I would have just said,
Oh, so that was
because
consideration, maybe.
living in Waterloo in the 70s, and you could go out to John Deere
Sure.
and get a job and make probably twice what the teachers were making and have a good life.
Right.
you know, and that was the option, but he didn't want that for me, you know, and I appreciate the fact that he said, you're not gonna live this life. You're gonna do something different.
Right. Right.
And
That's interesting.
yeah. So it all worked out, I guess. You know, I ended up in Guthrie Center and.
Right. Did you do coaching? Were you coaching?
Oh yeah, I coached. Right at the tail end of the interview at Guthrie Center, they said, "Oh, by the way, we'd like you to be the head girls softball coach." And I said, "Well, of course, who was I to say no?"
No. Oh yeah, sure. Hell yes,
And,
I know what I'm doing.
Guthrie Center they were great in girls basketball. I mean, they had a tradition. They were. So I thought this is gonna be a good deal, but
Yeah.
Little did I know that softball just wasn't on the agenda there. And we had like 10 girls, and we had a couple girls that couldn't even play catch because the ball would hit them. Honest to God, the ball would hit them. So we I think we were like 3-24 or something. Yeah, and the beauty of it was we always had to travel, you know, because Guthrie Center's out in the middle of nowhere, but we had to travel long distance to get to these games, and we'd be done pretty quick. They had the 10-run rule, they had the 12-run rule, and we met.
So don't shut the bus off. Leave it running.
Well, and you know how girls pitch and fast pitch.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, they do the windmill, the whole works. Our girl couldn't do that. She it was like slow pitch.
Just chuck it in.
Just chuck it in.
Oh my goodness.
Well, but that was a 1-year deal. So
Yeah, you coach football there? Or did you wait till you
I was
got
an
the pole?
assistant football there. Merv Croker was the head football coach. I don't know if you guys know Merv, but Merv played at Iowa State and played for the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
And just a fantastic guy. And so he was a head coach, and my brother-in-law ended up marrying his sister. So we've kind of
Oh, wow.
families
Okay.
kind of
Okay. So you're
still kind of in contact, and I just got his football card, so I kind of I'm going to
cool.
have him autograph it. And so I have the Merv Croker football card from the Buffalo Bills. He played when O.J. Simpson was there.
Right. Now I remember when Bob, when you were the head sophomore coach at Southeast Bowl back when I was
right.
Yeah,
right.
you'd been at variety of levels, the varsity level,
junior high. I did
junior high level.
Yeah.
But one of my most memorable visions of you is actually coaching the girls during homecoming.
The Powder Puff.
The Powder Puff. You were just as into that as it seems like every other game.
Well,
I mean, I just remember cracking up because they'd always make us like Dietzebach and us and Stefan. We'd have to go out and officiate, which meant nothing. I mean, you didn't make any calls. And old Bob's over there, and he's jumping up and down and going crazy.
I think I've got a picture of me jumping up during one of the. I don't know maybe I don't know, yearbook or something, but well, yeah,
like that energy,
right? I don't know. What was amazing to me with the Powder Puff was how serious the girls took it once the game started. Now the practice wasn't quite so serious.
Right.
Oh my, practice. They weren't into practice, but boy, they
got after
they
the
were
game.
Vicious. Yeah,
Pretty vicious. Yeah.
I'd like to have signed a few up.
So did you have some strategy in place for the
No,
girls?
just survive and be done. Be done.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's great. How are we doing on time over there, sound or technical engineer? 48.5. Okay, we're doing good. Bob, do you miss teaching? Now you were.
You know what I do? I miss teaching. Substitute teaching's a different animal. It really is. It's again, we talked about this, but it's just not the same. I can't. I don't. If the teacher gives me a plan, that's the plan, and I miss that interaction with the students because, like today, for instance, I don't think I said one word to a student. It was you're taking the test, and I sat there and watched them take a test. But I miss that. But on the other hand, it was time. I don't think I'd retired too soon.
No, good.
I didn't want to become one of those teachers that stayed too long.
Right. Well,
And
we've all seen.
that's out there, and I think that's true of
And
any.
I don't always blame.
But
those.
isn't that's true of
100%.
any profession?
Sure.
I'm sure where
Right.
people just hang on for
Too long.
And in teaching, if it's just so much different because if you're in the business world or whatever, but we're dealing with kids, and it just becomes ugly if you stay too long.
Right. And you've seen him turn. We've all seen him turn.
I've seen it, and
It's
I understand it.
Right.
I
do, and
understand
I don't jump too quickly to conclusions about blame and things like that, because there's all kinds of factors that go into why people might want to stay on or might not want to. But yeah, I always wondered the last few years if this is going to be your last year.
Yeah.
Is this going to be your last year? And
Yeah,
then
it's always
you spent that 3 or 4 months where you can't even sub, right?
No, yeah, you have the down period. I couldn't sub until Christmas it was October.
Like
It was
October, November,
It
something like
Christmas.
that. So that was really odd, I'm sure.
Oh, it was all right.
Was it? All right.
It was okay.
Did you get that itch though, like that first day of school? Where
I really missed that first day.
Are you checking your pockets?
Because the
wondering if
first
you
day is
forgot
cool.
something?
The first day is cool. Everybody's happy and hello, how are you
right,
doing?
right,
Kind
right.
of catching up, and I missed that. I really missed the last day of school. That's what I really miss. That feeling of
right.
I'm done. I got the summer and
Right.
try
Don't
to
let
recruit.
And you
the
gotta
door
miss
hit
that.
ya.
You got to miss that crew, Bob. Because
I do.
That department.
There was such good people. I made
Kelly
such,
and Dave.
yeah,
and,
they're
and
like
all
family
those,
to me. They
Yeah, all
really
those
are.
guys, especially that.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave anybody out, but
Oh,
I always think of and Kelly's not even a social studies guy. He's one of the.
but he's in the office.
the coach,
right?
the teacher coach. But some of those guys that have been in the district for 20 or some years.
Yeah,
20-some
they're
years.
like family to me. They
Yeah,
really
right.
are. They're just good people. I met, always worked with really, really good people.
Right.
I really honestly can't think of anybody I just couldn't stand to be
Right.
around. We always had good rapport, and I think that's really important. It's kind of like the dimensions of learning thing, that environment. You create an environment. We always had a pretty loose environment where we could just, vent to each other. We could laugh with each other.
Sure.
We could, yell at each other. Whatever we
Right,
needed to
right.
do, we did, and then we could go back into the classroom and
Right.
try to be normal. You
Right.
know. So
Yeah, of all the departments that I had contact with, there seemed to be more of a rapport there in the social studies department. Seemed to be fewer, or less drama.
yeah, I don't think
I mean, you
can't-
guys, were not only did you get along pretty good, but when you didn't get along or something was going on, you seemed to deal with it. And
Right,
so
right.
I always like going up to your guy. I didn't get up there enough. It seemed like I was chained to that office.
Well, yeah,
but I like
we
going
all-
up there because I
yeah.
knew you guys were. But
we were usually pretty good, and we'd work it out.
Right.
So if somebody had a problem, but yeah, I miss that daily interaction.
Sure.
I do,
Right.
But I'm coping.
Yeah, yeah.
you get by.
Traveling, are you doing any traveling?
My wife is younger than me. The girl I met at Guthrie
Yeah,
Center.
right.
So she's got probably another 5 years of work, and it would have been really nice to retire together. But on the other hand, I think you can be around each other too much sometimes too. We do have plans to travel, and
Good.
we're finally, we finally can do that.
Right.
When we had kids, we didn't have
No.
any money, we didn't have the time.
Couldn't
They
do
were
it.
doing
Right.
sports, and so it's nice to have that option at
Sure.
least. We've got
Get down to Arizona and visit Horsemen at all, or
I haven't been down there. I
Okay.
mean, I haven't been down to see him, but I hope someday that that's on the agenda.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
yeah,
We'll get some stories going down.
I'm
there.
sure you will. All right, tell me one, if you can. Kind of put you on the spot, but I remember, I just remember because not only the students that I worked with, but the 3 kids in my home right now that had you. The part where you have students bring in artifacts.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Can you
Oh,
highlight
geez.
one or two that you can just remember as being just outstanding?
Golly,
I'm putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot.
No, I remember,
Well, I
people,
used to have what they
grandpas
call-
would drive
Oh
up
my
in these
God,
sweet
yeah, we had
cars.
people pull up in cars, and we'd people that they'd have autographs of famous people. Oh,
They'd been to
seriously.
Woodstock and
Woodstock.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I know that there was. I mean, that was one of the things that I loved about your class is that kids took this so seriously. Some
Right.
some kids just
Right.
brought some of the greatest things ever. So I don't know if you can even.
Geez.
I should've maybe prepped
when
you.
I'm on my way home tonight, I'll think of about 20 different
Sure, right.
things. But No, it's just
something that just blew you away, something that like, oh my God, like, or maybe something that somebody brought and you're like, maybe you shouldn't have brought that because that is a little bit.
well, yeah, I had one of those. I think one of the kids brought a Playboy one time.
Yes.
And I caught it at the door, you know.
Right.
I said, I'll have to hold on to this for a while.
Yeah, sure,
No,
right. At least through my planning
Yeah.
time.
Puts it in his drawer of.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. Golly, I mean, yeah, I mean, every semester there would be at least one or two things that just, and you know, of course, I'm a little animated, and I would just like grab it and run out of the room, run down the hall.
right,
Yeah, you
sure,
guys got
yeah.
to see this. You got to see this. But yeah, there were, you know, concerts that people. Well, there was one. What was it? It's an album where a student brought an album in, okay? And I'm like, okay, good artifact. Always want to, you know, make him feel good about it. And I looked at the album. He goes, yeah, look that over. Okay, yeah, that's an album cover. And he said, you see those two people right there? He goes, that's my mom and dad.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a famous album. And yeah, they were on an album cover.
And you got confirmation that was his parents.
Oh yeah. It wasn't Woodstock, but it was something
from an artist from that.
I want to say it was not Def Leppard or someone in that genre.
Okay.
And on the album cover were his mom and dad.
Was it like
They were at a
shot
concert.
of a concert? And
Yeah, it was like a live album.
Yeah.
And I thought, holy crap.
Grateful
man.
Dead?
Oh, no, it wasn't Grateful Dead. It wasn't.
Oh, my
I wouldn't have known
God.
that. But I want to say it was either Def Leppard or, again, I'm going to.
Right.
You're dealing with a senior citizen.
No, you know.
But that was way cool. That was way cool.
Well, and that was the cool thing about that whole activity is Quinn, who's a junior now, had your class, and she went to talk to her grandpa, who was in Vietnam. And,
Right.
you know, and I just remember how excited he was to get
Well,
asked.
I think, and that was really the point of the assignment. The point wasn't, can you find something cool? The point was to have that conversation.
Yes.
Because, you know, it's like I'm sitting here with all these memories, and I would love for one of my grandkids to ask me. My whole man cave is full of stuff, and just ask me about something on that, or ask me about being involved in this, or ask me, and it just opens up that dialogue, you know. And I think that's something that'll stay with them.
Right.
You know, those are the memories that you'll have then, instead of
It cultivates
right,
connections
absolutely.
with each other.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
good
really what it
stuff,
was
man.
about, you know. Gosh.
I might have to steal that one.
Well, I'll tell
so
you
it can
guys,
live
I'm going to
on.
leave here and just kick myself in the butt.
Well, you know what?
Because all these things
Hey,
have come flooding.
This is not
come
your
back.
last time here, Bob. I'm
Oh.
telling you right now, we're going to have you on again because, you know, Dan and I typically, or we have done this, just he and I, but, you know, 4 or 5 times we've had guests.
Right.
And we like to have guests, and we don't really have, you know, a huge format. It was kind of, you know, organized around the idea of teaching, sent to the office. But we're going to have you back on if you'll come back.
Yeah, and I'll even, you know, remember it next time and
Yeah.
be on time. And, yeah, jeez.
You know, that's all right. You know, we were, for our listeners, Bob was just a little late, but it's okay because we knew he'd be here.
You know,
And, you know, that's all right. You know, that's the way we operate here. It's fine.
I heard they had beer here, so I got here.
That's
He
right.
answered his phone and we could hear this techno music in the
Yeah,
background.
oh yeah, techno.
It was really, he's like, what?
I can't hear you.
Oh, it's tonight. Okay, I'll be right there.
All right. Hey, we are, you know, at the end of this. And,
my.
Bob, we really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, I really enjoyed it. I
Good.
did. I was a little nervous because I don't know. You know,
Yeah, it's weird.
Sure what
It's
I've got
weird.
to say, but
I think if someone wasn't nervous when they come in to do this, it would.
I still get a little nervous.
Yeah, it's.
You know,
it's-
when you honestly, when you were late, which was fine,
Yeah,
and we
what
were,
was your tardy policy, by the way?
Yeah,
Oh, well,
Because guess what?
first
People that had, there's a reason my classes were full because I didn't watch that too closely.
I'm sure my daughter loved that.
Well,
actually,
if I'd have been hardcore, I wouldn't have had that.
I'm sure Quinn enjoyed that lax policy. Well, I actually kind of wondered,
remember her being late.
God, should we do this tomorrow night? But then I'm like, this is
No.
my 19th
I would-
podcast.
I would have
and I
been-
still get nervous, Bob. I
Yeah.
still get a little, So.
And then when you remember that no one listens anyway.
Right,
So,
right.
except for our really good friends, which are the most awesome people
Well, I
in the world.
hope I didn't bore him to death.
No,
No,
I think
no.
you know what we had last week when we had Nolting on.
I saw
there were 200 people on YouTube that listened, and who knows how many Spotify.
so you can access this through YouTube.
YouTube and Spotify, and I'll send you the links, and then
Okay.
you can
Sounds
forward them
great.
to whoever you want, or you don't have to if you don't want to. But yeah, we want to have you on again, Bob. You're
Well, I
great.
appreciate it. I enjoyed it. I did. And
Good.
all these memories are going to flood into my head as I go home. And
Yeah.
I said,
Hey,
I
you
wish
know-
I would have told him about this artifact that this guy. Well, what was the football one?
Start making a list of them,
Somebody
Bob,
brought-
and write a book.
That's right.
Well, my wife is, and my sister's actually a writer, and
Do it.
She
okay.
she writes flash fiction, and she's pretty renowned in that field.
Let her be your ghostwriter. Just
Well,
tell her.
she's always told me you need to write.
Get 'em
You need to
down.
do it. And
I
I'm
know.
like, I don't
should.
know. We'll see.
Just start with ideas. Just write them down.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I appreciate you guys.
No,
me
it's
on.
good to have you
Again,
on.
I apologize for.
Love you, brother.
I love you, guys.
Bob, you're a good man. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming
Love
on the
you,
show.
Shitty.
Man, thanks.
All right.
Appreciate it. Finish my beer.
All right.
Good to go.